Deep in the vastness of space, where stars paint endless stories across the cosmic canvas, humanity had finally reached beyond its cradle. We weren't alone out there. Far from it. The galaxy teemed with civilizations both wonderful and terrifying. But no one expected that a chance encounter between two souls would change the course of history forever. The year was 2187, and I was just another soldier stationed on our frontier outpost, Helios 7. Most days blurred together, routine patrols, equipment maintenance, and staring out at the swirling purple nebula that dominated our sky. That was until the emergency beacon pierced through our normal communications chatter. At first, we thought it was a glitch. The signal was unlike anything in our database, a haunting melody of digital pulses that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But when our sensors picked up the small craft tumbling through the debris field near our station, everything changed. I volunteered for the rescue mission. As our shuttle approached the damaged vessel, its elegant design took my breath away. The hull seemed to shimmer like liquid silver, with flowing lines that reminded me of the ancient elven artwork I'd seen in history books. This was definitely not human technology. The boarding was tricky, spacewalks always are, but nothing in my 12 years of military service could have prepared me for what I found inside. Among the sparking circuits and crystalline shards of what must have been the ship's control center, she lay unconscious. Her skin had a subtle iridescent quality, like mother of pearl, and delicate markings traced patterns across her face that seemed to glow faintly in the emergency lights. She was clearly humanoid, but there was an otherworldly grace about her that made my heart skip a beat. The serious injuries she'd sustained were evident. A nasty gash across her forehead leaked silvery blood, and her breathing was shallow and irregular. My medical scanner went crazy trying to analyze her physiology. It wasn't until I got her back to our medical bay that we learned the truth. She wasn't just any alien. She was the crown princess of the Lumerian Empire, one of the most powerful civilizations in our sector of the galaxy, and someone had tried very hard to make her disappear. The attack on her ship wasn't an accident. As she drifted in and out of consciousness during those first critical hours, fragments of her story emerged. A plot within her own court, betrayal by those she trusted most, and a desperate escape that nearly cost her life. But there was something else, something that made her eyes fill with fear whenever she started to speak of it. Now I found myself caught between duty and destiny. Our small outpost wasn't equipped to handle the political firestorm that was surely coming. Protocol dictated that we should notify both our superiors and the Lumerian authorities immediately. But the princess's weak grip on my arm and her whispered plea made me hesitate. Please, if they find me here, all hope is lost. Not just for me, but for everyone. Looking into her eyes, those swirling pools of silver and starlight, I knew I was about to make a decision that would change everything. The fate of two civilizations might hang in the balance, and all I had to go on was my gut feeling and the desperate words of a wounded alien princess. They say the greatest journeys often begin with a single step. But as I stood there in the medical bay, watching the princess's chest rise and fall with each shallow breath, I couldn't help but wonder if this first step might be leading us all towards salvation or disaster. Time moved differently in that medical bay. Every beep of the monitoring equipment felt like a countdown, though to what, I wasn't sure. The princess's condition had stabilized, but the weight of her warning hung heavy in the air. I'd managed to buy us some time by reporting communications damage from the debris field, a convenient half-truth that would give us a few hours before questions started coming from command. As dawn broke over Helios 7's artificial day cycle, the princess finally opened her eyes fully. The silver swirls in her irises seemed to dance as she took in her surroundings. "You're safe," I assured her, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I'm Lieutenant Ryan. Can you tell me what happened out there?" She sat up slowly, her movements graceful despite her injuries. Was Princess Astra," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that our universal translators couldn't quite capture. "And I fear I've brought great danger to your outpost." Her hands trembled as she traced the healing wound on her forehead. The story she told next made my blood run cold. The Lumerian Empire, despite its appearance of unity and advancement, was fracturing from within. A shadowy faction within the royal court had discovered something, an ancient technology buried deep beneath the crystal spires of their homeworld, something that should have remained forgotten. They believe it's the key to unlimited power, Astra explained, her voice dropping to barely a whisper. But they don't understand. The archives speak of a time when our ancestors sealed it away, choosing to accept their limitations rather than risk unleashing its full potential. The price was too high. I offered her a cup of water, noticing how she examined the simple container with subtle fascination. Why come to us? Surely there are allies within your own people who could help. Her bitter laugh held no humor. My own security chief led the assassination attempt. The faction has spread like a virus through our highest ranks. They knew I'd discovered their plan to reactivate the technology, so they moved against me. But they didn't expect me to have my own contingency plan. Astra reached into a hidden pocket in her shimmering garments and withdrew a small crystal, no larger than my thumb. Even through her trembling fingers, I could see it pulse with an inner light. This is the key they need. Without it, they cannot access the facility. I had planned to reach the neutral territory of the Centauri Alliance, but they hunted me down too quickly. The gravity of the situation hit me like a physical force. This wasn't just about protecting one person anymore. This was about preventing what could become an interstellar catastrophe. If this faction got their hands on whatever technology they were after, the balance of power in our sector would shatter. Before I could respond, the outpost's alert system blared to life. "Lieutenant," Dr. Chen's voice crackled over my comm unit. "We've got multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're running Lumerian recognition codes, but something's off about their approach pattern." Astra's face went pale, the markings on her skin dimming noticeably. "They found me faster than I thought possible. Your outpost, your people. I never meant to bring this war to your doorstep." I helped her to her feet, my mind racing through options. We had less than standard procedures for dealing with a potential alien civil war showing up on our doorstep. But as I looked at Astra, at the mixture of fear and determination in her eyes, I knew we were past the point of standard procedures. "We're not beaten yet," I said, already reaching for my tactical pad. "But you need to tell me everything about these people who are after you. Because if we're going to survive what comes next, we can't afford any more surprises." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. I'd served in enough hot zones to know that sometimes the best defense is making your enemy think twice about attacking. Heliosteven might have been a frontier outpost, but we weren't helpless. 3 Lumerian warships, holding position just outside our defensive perimeter. Our tactical officer reported through the comms. "They're demanding we hand over the fugitive and threatening military action if we refuse." The slight tremor in his voice betrayed the tension we all felt. Astra worked quickly beside me, her fingers dancing over our command console as she shared critical information about Lumerian ship designs. "Their shields have a weakness, a fluctuation pattern that occurs every 47 seconds. It's classified knowledge known only to the royal family." I divided our limited security forces, positioning them at key points throughout the station. Our automated defense systems might have been outdated compared to Lumerian technology, but sometimes older systems had their advantages. They were harder to hack, for one thing. "Lieutenant," Astra caught my arm, her touch sending an unexpected warmth through my sleeve. "There's something else you should know. The crystal. It's not just a key. It's a warning." Her silver eyes met mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "The technology they're trying to access. It was originally designed as a means of instant transportation across vast distances, but the tests showed it did more than move matter through space." The main view screen flared to life, showing a figure I instantly recognized from our diplomatic briefings, Commander Vex, the same security chief who had tried to kill Astra. His angular features were twisted into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Princess Astra," his voice filled our command center. "How unfortunate to find you seeking refuge among lesser beings. Return what you've stolen, and perhaps we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed." The threat in his words was unmistakable. I stepped forward, squaring my shoulders. "This is a United Earth outpost. Any act of aggression will be considered a declaration of war. Standard diplomatic response, but I put every ounce of conviction I could into it. Vex's smile widened. How noble! But you don't understand what's at stake. The power to reshape reality itself lies within our grasp. The ability to not just travel through space, but to bend the very fabric of existence. Why should such power remain locked away when it could elevate our people to godhood? Because it nearly destroyed everything the last time. Astra's voice rang out. The transportation was just a side effect. The technology doesn't just move things through space. It tears holes in the barrier between dimensions. The things that came through, that's why our ancestors sealed it away. A warning klaxon blared. Multiple smaller craft launching from the Lumerian vessels. Our sensors officer called out. They're on an attack vector. The crystal in Astra's hand began to pulse more rapidly, its light synchronizing with the strange markings on her skin. They're not just here for me, she whispered. They're desperate now. The alignment is nearly perfect, and they need this key to complete the activation sequence. I made a decision then, one that went against every regulation in the book. Begin emergency evacuation protocols for all non-essential personnel. Redirect power to forward shields. I turned to Astra. Whatever your ancestors sealed away, whatever's on the other side, we can't let them open that door. The first impacts rocked the station as Lumerian fighters began their attack run. Warning lights flashed across every console as our shields strained under the assault. But in that moment, watching Astra stand tall despite her injuries, seeing my crew move with practiced precision despite their fear, I knew we'd crossed a point of no return. The real question was, would humanity's first major encounter with alien politics end in triumph or tragedy? The answer, I suspected, would depend on what we did in the next few minutes. The station shuddered under another barrage of fire, but something about the attack pattern felt off. Through the chaos of blaring alarms and urgent status reports, I noticed the Lumerian fighters weren't targeting our critical systems. They were hurting us, forcing our shields to concentrate in specific areas while leaving others exposed. Lieutenant, our sensor operator's voice cracked with urgency. I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the degriz field. Something's powering up out there. Astra rushed to the console, her face draining of color as she read the data. No, they didn't just follow me here. They knew I'd come this way. This outpost, its position wasn't random, was it? I pulled up the original survey data from when Helios 7 was established. The reports mentioned unusual gravitational readings, but nothing that raised red flags. Now looking at it through the lens of what we knew, the truth hit like a punch to the gut. The ancient transportation network, Astra's voice trembled. Your people built this outpost right on top of one of its nodes. That's why the crystal's pulse is getting stronger. The alignment isn't just about time. It's about position. They're not trying to destroy the station. They're trying to use it. Another blast rocked us, and this time warning lights flashed across every console. Hull breach on level 3, someone shouted. But before we could respond, a new alarm tone filled the air, one I'd never heard before. The crystal in Astra's hand was now pulsing so brightly it hurt to look at directly. The markings on her skin blazed in response, and I realized with sudden clarity that the connection between her people and this ancient technology went deeper than she'd revealed. There's something I haven't told you, she said, meeting my eyes with a mix of fear and determination. My bloodline, we're not just rulers. We're guardians. The markings aren't decorative. They're a key, just like the crystal. My ancestors didn't just seal away the technology. They bound themselves to it. That's why Vex couldn't just kill me. He needs both me and the crystal to complete the activation. A new voice cut through our communications, different from Vex's. Indeed, my dear niece, and now you understand why all of this was necessary. The speaker's tone carried the weight of authority and age. Astra's shock was visible. Uncle Theron, but you were supposed to be in deep meditation on the holy moon, playing the doddering old royal advisor while Vex took the blame for our actions. Theron's laugh was cold. The perfect cover, wouldn't you say? Your father suspected nothing until it was too late. The implications hit hard. This wasn't just a rebellious faction. It was a carefully orchestrated coup years in the making, and we were caught in the middle of it. Suddenly, the debris field lit up like a new sun. The energy readings went off the charts as ancient machinery, hidden for millennia among what we thought was space junk, began to activate. The very fabric of space around our station started to distort, creating patterns that hurt my eyes to look at. The node is powering up. Astra grabbed my arm, her touch burning with strange energy. But there's something else, something wrong. The readings, they're not like anything in the historical records. The barrier between dimensions isn't just thinning, it's shattering. Through the main viewport, I watched in horror as space itself began to tear open, revealing something that shouldn't exist in our reality. And in that moment, I realized we weren't just fighting to save ourselves or even two civilizations. We were about to face something that had terrified an ancient, vastly superior civilization enough to lock it away forever. The question was, what could possibly have scared them that much? Reality itself seemed to bend and warp around Helios 7 as the ancient machinery surged to life. Through the viewport, the tear in space had grown into a massive wound in the fabric of the universe, its edges crackling with impossible colors that shouldn't exist in our dimension. The containment field. Astra's voice carried over the chaos. My ancestors didn't just seal away the technology. They created a prison. Uncle, you fool, you're releasing something that nearly destroyed all sentient life eons ago. The station's structure groaned under the strain of dimensional forces. Through the growing rift, I caught glimpses of something vast moving in the void beyond, shapes that defied comprehension and sent cold shivers down my spine. Their laughter echoed through our comms. You understand nothing, child. These beings, they offered our ancestors power beyond imagination, but they were too afraid to grasp it. We won't make the same mistake. With their power, we'll reshape reality itself. But something was wrong. The energy readings from the crystal in Astra's hands had changed, resonating with the markings on her skin in a way that seemed to push back against the dimensional tear. That's when I understood. The Lumerians hadn't just created a prison, they'd become its guardians, encoding the protection into their very DNA. Lieutenant, Astra turned to me, her silver eyes now blazing like stars. I know what we have to do, but I can't guarantee we'll survive it. I looked at my crew, saw the determination in their faces despite their fear. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't fighting, it's knowing what's worth sacrificing everything for. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Astra pressed the crystal into my hand, its energy burning cold against my skin. Her markings began to glow brighter than ever before, and she spoke words in an ancient language that seemed to resonate with the very atoms of reality. The crystal isn't just a key, she explained quickly, it's a focus point. My ancestors designed it to channel dimensional energy, but they also created a failsafe, a way to collapse the network entirely if it was ever breached. The implications hit me. You're not just closing the door, you're planning to destroy the entire system. Yes, but I need your help. Human DNA, it's different from ours. More adaptable. That's why they built this outpost here. They knew that someday we might need your kind to help seal this away forever. Time was running out. Through the rift, tentacles of dark energy were beginning to probe our reality. Theron's ships had started firing on the station with renewed fury, realizing what we were attempting. I took Astra's hand, the crystal clasped between our palms. The sensation was indescribable, like touching a live wire connected directly to the universe itself. Together, we began the sequence she somehow knew instinctively through her genetic memory. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The ancient machinery began to overload, but instead of opening the dimensional barriers further, it started collapsing them. Theron's scream of rage turned to one of fear as his ships were caught in the backlash of dimensional energy. But something unexpected happened. As the rift began to close, the crystal's energy didn't just destroy the network, it transformed it. The genetic safeguards encoded in Astra's bloodline, combined with human adaptability, created something entirely new. Instead of collapse, we initiated a metamorphosis. The dimensional tear sealed itself, but not before we caught a glimpse of the truth. The beings weren't trying to break into our universe. They were warning us about something even worse that was coming, something that both humanity and the Lumerian Empire would need to face together. As the energy faded and emergency systems kicked in, I looked at Astra. Her markings had changed, showing new patterns that pulsed in sync with the transformed crystal. Well, I managed a weak smile. I guess this means our peoples have some talking to do. She returned the smile, though her eyes held a new weight of knowledge. Yes, but first, we need to prepare. What we saw through that rift, it wasn't just a glimpse of the past. It was a glimpse of our future. The immediate danger had passed, but as I helped Astra to her feet and watched the debris field settle back into normal space, I knew this was just the beginning. Sometimes the greatest adventures don't end with a victory. They end with the promise of an even bigger challenge ahead. The aftermath of the dimensional incident left Helios 7 changed forever. As emergency repair crews worked to stabilize the station, delegations from both Earth and the Lumerian Empire arrived, drawn by the massive energy signature our confrontation had generated. To say they were surprised to find their people working side by side would be an understatement. Theron and his conspirators had survived, though their ships were crippled by the dimensional backlash. The look on his face when he was led away in restraints by his own people spoke volumes. Sometimes the hunger for power blinds us to the responsibility that comes with it. In the days that followed, Astra and I spent countless hours in debriefings, explaining what had happened. The transformed crystal now sat in a specially designed containment chamber, its energy signature completely different from before. Scientists from both our peoples worked together to understand the changes, though I noticed they kept their distance from it. Some doors, once opened, leave marks on our memories that can't be erased. You know, Astra said one evening as we stood watching the purple nebula through the repaired viewport, my father once told me that true strength isn't in having power, but in knowing when not to use it. I never truly understood what he meant until now. The markings on her skin had stabilized into their new pattern, a permanent reminder of how close we'd come to disaster. But they also represented something else, hope. The genetic markers that had once been purely protective had evolved, suggesting our peoples might be more compatible than anyone had imagined. Earth's diplomatic corps was having a field day with the implications. The first human-Lumerian joint defense initiative was already being drafted, with Helios 7 designated as its headquarters. Funny how near catastrophes have a way of cutting through centuries of diplomatic red tape. You never did tell me, I said, turning to face her, did you know this might happen? When you chose to come here specifically? She smiled, and there was that otherworldly grace again that had first caught my attention in her damaged ship. I knew this outpost was special, but the details were unclear. My people's genetic memory is more like intuition than actual knowledge. I just knew I had to reach you. The station's lights dimmed slightly as it shifted into night cycle, the purple nebula casting soft shadows across the command center. Most of the crew had cycled out for rest, leaving us in a moment of relative quiet. Whatever's coming, Astra continued, her voice carrying that musical quality that no translator could quite capture. We'll face it together. What we saw through that rift, it wasn't just a warning. It was a call to action. I nodded, thinking about how much had changed in just a few days. An alien princess, a dimensional rift, and a conspiracy that spanned centuries. If someone had told me this would be my week, I'd have recommended they visit the medical bay for evaluation. You know, I said, on Earth we have an old saying, the stars align for those who are ready to see them. Astra laughed softly. We have a similar saying on Lumeria, though ours involves quantum harmonics and is significantly longer. As we stood there, watching the stars and sharing stories from our vastly different worlds, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest adventures aren't about the battles we fight or the powers we gain. They're about the connections we make and the barriers we break down, not just between dimensions, but between peoples. The crystal pulsed gently in its containment chamber, a reminder that some mysteries are meant to be preserved rather than solved. But with the combined strength of our peoples and the lessons we'd learned, I had a feeling we'd be ready for whatever the universe had in store for us next. After all, the best stories don't really end. They just make way for new beginnings.